The Prime Minister has been busy not just today, but all weekend, talking the talk on a sensible energy policy. Over the weekend, the Prime Minister announced a review of controversial anti-car schemes across Britain, firmly stating that he's on the side of the motorist. And today, he's been in Aberdeenshire announcing the government's support for 100 new gas and oil licences in the North Sea, along with the development of carbon capture technology. This is really encouraging. He made the crucial point that even when we reach 2050 and are supposedly net zero, a quarter of our energy will still come from fossil fuels. He even mentioned something that we have repeatedly explained on State of the Nation, that using domestic fossil fuels, including fracking, of course, is far more carbon efficient than importing them. But in spite of his pledges to review low-traffic neighbourhoods, even touching on 20-mile-an-hour speed limits, when a group of Tory MPs, my next guest, and I included, wrote to him calling for the delay of the 2030 ban on new petrol and diesel cars, he doubled down on the forthcoming ban. We do not have the infrastructure of this plan, nor is the market ready for the move. Electric car chiefs, who have every reason to support the policy, have said the idea of mass market products are not viable in the near future, owing to the cost of the batteries, many of which come from China. And with these 100 new oil and gas licences, well, I'm afraid to say there's nothing particularly new about them. The licensing round began when I was business secretary. He is merely following through with what was already in place. What we need is a reversal of the most costly policies that are taking effect or are set to take effect. The Prime Minister said this today.
So when I was became Prime Minister, I set up a brand new department for energy security and net zero. And I think both of those things are important. Of course I'm committed to net zero, but I'm also committed to our energy security, and we will get to net zero in a proportionate and pragmatic way that doesn't unnecessarily burden families with costs or hassle that they don't need in their lives right now.
But he must understand the inherent contradiction in these two principles, net zero and energy security. The former is holding back the latter while costing a fortune. Former Chancellor of the Exchequer, Philip Hammond, not a man I always agree with, but who was very wise about this, calculated it would cost us £1 trillion to get to net zero. The war in Ukraine has taught us, amongst many other things, the importance of having our own energy security, and the Americans have shown us through their energy security, because of their willingness to make use of their own domestic energy supplies, that if you have energy security, you also have lower inflation, because it's low energy costs that are helping the US economy to grow faster than ours and has kept inflation down. When even Tony Blair has spoken out against burdening the public with the cost of net zero, you can be sure that we are being too hasty with the green agenda. Britain has already done more than most for the transition to net zero. As I've mentioned before, Yale University publishes an annual environmental performance index, and the UK finished in second place out of 180 countries last year, only behind Denmark. According to the independent Climate Action Tracker, we are the only major economy held at the almost sufficient standard. No country is at a higher standard. But we can't pursue this agenda to the detriment and the cost of the public, least of all those who aren't particularly well off. It's democratic to have a vote on this, to allow people to choose. But in recent elections, all parties have been saying the same thing. We need to ensure that the least well-off in society are protected and are helped, and that this transition has their support. And as we saw in the Uxbridge by-election, when it comes to the vote, people don't want to be cold and poor. So the question for the Prime Minister, whilst he talks the talk, is can he walk the walk? Are we going to see low-traffic neighbourhoods stopped? Are we going to see boilers allowed to continue, gas boilers in our houses? Are we going to see cars still being built with the internal combustion engine after 2030? These are the things that need to change to keep costs down.